how to decide whether you want to replace just the door or if you want to replace the door and the frame. In most cases, no matter what the frame looks like, I can always replace just the door. But for those of you who are wondering what are the issues that would want you to replace the frame as well, here we go. So take a look at the frame. Sometimes these frames are cracked, split, termite infested, rotten, or they have 20 coats of paint on them, or they just look awful. And this one has got all these old strike plates on here. It's got a ton of paint on it. And this is very thin right here, so it's not going to give you a good seal against the door. It's got various types of weather stripping put on it. Here you can see the old chipped paint, and it just doesn't look great. And when you see the hinges have 10 coats of paint on them, and they're trying all kinds of ways to seal the various gaps and things like that. It's got old screen door hinges on it. This is a good example of a frame that needs to be replaced. Since they want this frame replaced and they want this old junky door replaced, this thing did have a good run, but obviously it's at the end of its useful life. Then you get what is called a pre-hung door, and that is a door that comes within its own frame. And when you're getting a pre-hung door, there are measurements that are critical. Don't worry about measuring the actual frame. You just measure the actual door. Hook a tape measure to the end and measure to the end of the door, and then round up. You see this one is just under 42 inches, so you'd get a 42-inch door. Then you measure the height. Put the tape at the bottom, and then most doors are 80. So this is just under 80, so you're gonna get an 80-inch door. Size of the jamb is critical, so you need to measure the actual jamb. Now you're not measuring the outside molding or the inside molding, which is called the casing. You wanna measure just the actual jamb. So I put my tape on the end of the jamb, and you see this is a 5.5-inch jamb. Standard size is 4.5 inches, and if it doesn't fit, I can always make it fit, but if you can get the exact jamb, it just makes things easier for me. And then the last thing you need to know is the handing. That's very important. This one swings in, this is an in swing. So you stand with your back to the hinges. And which one of your arms mimics the movement of the door? This is my right hand. So since the door swings in the direction of my right hand, this is called a right hand in swing. So that's what you need to know. So they got a 42 by 80 pre-hung right hand in swing with a 5.5-inch jamb. If we look, you can see it moves the same way. So we measure the size of our new jamb, and it's just under 5.5. They aren't always exact, but that's close enough, and we can make that work.
So the casing comes off the outside of the door and the inside of the door. If it's good, I keep it. If it's bad, I toss it out and buy new or make my own. Then I cut up the jamb and get rid of it. This gets very messy, but I do this in a surgical manner because I've done so many of them. And the client wanted to save this original oak threshold, so I took it out and sanded down the part that would be exposed and then reinstalled it. So the new door will sit on top of that and it will look great. Next, the new frame goes in. It gets carefully tested, plumbed, squared, and of course secured. And finally, the door and locks get installed. Lastly, everything is waterproofed and the exterior and interior casings are installed, and you're left with something that looks fabulous.